This lesson, we're going to be using a standalone application that's going to connect to a spreadsheet by its ID, select some data from the spreadsheet, and then use that data in order to construct content that we're going to generate into a blob, turn that into a PDF, add that PDF as an attachment, and send it out to an email. And that data as well is going to be coming from the spreadsheet. And then we're also going to be updating the row of content within the spreadsheet. So this is all from a standalone application, sending to the email within column D and updating the contents of column E. And this is an example of the emails that are going to get sent out, that we customize the subject, customize the content of the email using data that we had from the spreadsheet, and also selecting the PDF. We can open that, and this is the PDF that's been attached, generated and attached to those emails when we run the script. So that's all coming up in this lesson. We've got a spreadsheet with 5 columns of information. So first name, last name, ID, an email address, and a bank column for PDF. We're going to be creating a standalone script that's going to select content from the spreadsheet, generate a PDF, and then we're going to also email that PDF out to a user that's contained from the spreadsheet. So pulling data from the spreadsheet, updating the spreadsheet, and in addition, sending out an email from the contents of the spreadsheet. So going over to script.google.com/home, this is where you can create a brand new project. So selecting the new project button is going to open up the editor. And so this is a standalone script. I'm going to call the script PDF sender. And now within the Google Drive, I'll have a script that's created called PDF sender. So if I do want to open up the script, after I close it, I have several places to go. I can go either into the drive, or I can go at the Google script.google.com/home and select the script from there. Give the function a name. I'll call it PDF maker. So what we want to do is we want to select the spreadsheet object as a variable. So using the SS variable name, and then spreadsheet app. We want to open by ID. And this is where we need to specify the ID of the spreadsheet object. And the quickest way to get the spreadsheet object ID is to go over, open up the spreadsheet, and in the top URL of the browser, you can select the ID. And it's going to be the set of characters past the /D and before the /edit. So select that whole character set. Make sure that you get all of the characters that are in there, because that's going to be the unique ID for the spreadsheet. Within the log, let's just make sure that we selected the spreadsheet object. We're also going to have to accept permissions. So run the function, and because this is the first time that we're running it, it's going to ask us for permissions. So it's a brand new script that we haven't accepted permissions for. Go through the review the permissions, select the user that you want to use and the account that you want to use in order to run the code. Make sure that the permissions are okay, and then hit allow, and that should allow us to run the code, select the spreadsheet object. Once we've selected the spreadsheet object, next we want to select the sheet of the data that we want to use. So selecting the spreadsheet object, we can get the sheet by name and look for the sheet with the name of data. We also want to retrieve back all of the values from the contents of the sheet. So I'll give this a name of data. Selecting the sheet object, we're going to get all of the content using the getDataRange method, and then get the values of the content from the data. We can also slice out and remove out the first row of content. So this should be returning back all of just the data object within an array, where each row is a separate array nested within a main array. Run the function again to make sure that we're able to see the data and log it out into the log. And once we're able to see the data, we can then loop through the data using for each. Select the row value, and we're also going to need the index because we want to update some of the content. So the index will tell us which value that we're currently looking at, and we can also then write to the spreadsheet. So we want to use and construct some HTML content. from the data that we've got within each row. So creating the HTML, we'll start with an H1 using the contents from row with the index value of 0. And this is up to you. You can customize the content as needed. And actually, let's change this to let so that we can write the additional content that we want within the HTML that we want showing up. So next line of code, and then we can close off the HTML tags. And I'm just going to add in the next row of content. And then maybe let's add in one more. And that should be good. So now we're going to generate some HTML. And we want to transform this HTML into a blob format. You can also log the HTML as it gets generated to make sure that the structure is proper and that you're populating the content properly as well. So run the code, and that should give us 3 chunks of HTML with 3 rows of content. If we had more rows of content, and we run the code, that will give us all of the content there. So it dynamically changes as we run through the code. So that gives us our HTML object. Now let's turn the HTML into a blob. So this is using the utilities. And within the utilities, we've got a method called new blob. And this can take HTML content and set it as a meme type of HTML. And it will construct the blob object. And you can run the code just to make sure that everything is proper. So it should be constructing blobs. And once you've got an object within a blob format, then you can convert it into a PDF. Let's create a name for the PDF. So within the blob, set a name for the blob. And we'll just use the user's name for the blob. And we're going to give it a file extension of PDF. So that's creating the PDF document. Next up, what we want to do is we want to send an email. So what we want is we want to select the email address. And that's also going to be contained within a row. And that's coming from the data. So that's contained within the row 3. We also have a subject. And here we can use the new PDF and then add in whatever information we want for the subject. And for the HTML body, whatever we want for the content of the HTML. So we can just also send the HTML body just as our HTML. So it can be the same thing in this case as what we're doing where we're generating the PDF. Now using the mail app, set up the mail object that we want to send. Within the mail object, using to, and specifying the email where we're sending it to. Next is the subject and the subject value that we want to use. Just add some more space there at the bottom and move this up. Next property is the HTML body. So just add the HTML content within there. And then lastly, we've got attachments. So we want to generate a PDF and attach it as a PDF. So get the blob object that we just created and get the blob as, and we need to specify the meme type that we want to use, which is going to be PDF. So that's going to construct the attachment as a PDF object that we're sending within the mail. Save it, clear out the inbox, and we actually need to add the send email. So add the send email. Let's try to run the function. We need to accept permissions, as now we're going to be sending out emails using the Google account within AppScript. So we got to make sure that we do have the proper permissions. And so it's generating all 4 blobs. Let's go check our inbox and see what we've got there. And when we refresh it, we can open up the 4 brand new emails, and each one of them contains the HTML content as well as a generated PDF file that was generated on the fly with Google Apps Script. Now these PDFs are just generated. They're sent out right away. You can also select to store the blob as a file and create files on your drive if you want. As we're outputting and sending out the emails, I'm going to comment this for once. Just comment that while we continue to develop this. I want to update column E that it's been sent out. In order to update the spreadsheet, we need to select the range that we want to update. And within the sheet object, using getRange method. We're selecting the value of the index plus 2. So index plus 2, because the index is going to be 0 based. So we need to add 2, one accounting for the headings, and the other one is counting that it's 0 based. So this is the row of content that we're starting at. Update column number 5. And if all we want to do is update the value, we can then just set the value here as well. And this value can just be a string value that says sent. So we don't even need to assign a variable to it. And now let's try that. I'll clear out the inbox, run the PDF maker function. We've got all of the documents that were just generated in the inbox. In addition, within the spreadsheet, we've updated that spreadsheet column that says sent. So now it's up to you. Create your own version of the application. You can customize the HTML content that's going to be contained within the PDF, as well as customize the HTML within the email that gets sent out.